Welcome to CMC. I'm Carol Looper. I'm a member of the CMC Board of Trustees, and I say I'm a retired reporter, but old reporters don't retire, they just fade away. Great to see everyone here today. I guess old reporters just sort of come to CMC.
Surface, yeah.
I worked at 10 and 4 and 6 and Gail at 4, so we've got the city's commercial stations covered. Today, the Columbus Metropolitan Club is pleased to present Boomer Revolution, brought to us in partnership with MORPC and sponsored by the Osteopathic Heritage Foundation. A big round of applause, please, for our sponsors, please. And please help me welcome Susan Beaudry, Director of Programs at the Osteopathic Heritage Foundations, to introduce our forum and our speakers. Susan?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Carol. On behalf of the Osteopathic Heritage Foundations, I'm really pleased to be here with you this afternoon and to support the mission of the Metropolitan Club to convene these weekly conversations that are important to our community. The largest and wealthiest generation ever born is now leading a massive shift in what it means to grow old. Boomers now in their 50s and early 60s will enjoy a life expectancy that has increased by more than 30 years in the last century. What will they do with their extra years? Where will they live? How long will they work, and how will they get there? Can they even afford to retire? To explore these questions and more, please help me welcome our expert panel today. We have founder and CEO of the Global Institute for Experienced Entrepreneurship, Elizabeth Isele. Columbus City Councilwoman Priscilla Tyson. Age-friendly community coordinator at MORPC, Katie White. And journalist Gail Hogan. Gail, you can take it away, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Many of you in our audience today are baby boomers, and that means that you were born between 1946 and 1964. That's between the age of 53 and 71. As Susan mentioned now, our life expectancy has gone up 30 years. That's terrific news, but it brings us some new challenges. And it appears that society is just starting to catch up to the new seniors. For many of today's seniors, their attitude is, it's not about aging, it's about living. And while many seniors are struggling with a meaning life after retirement age, others are clear-sighted and blazing new trails for seniors and others. And yet there are so many stereotypes of seniors that linger, and changing those attitudes with the general public can be difficult. So let's find out where we stand. Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. You are a guest to our city today, and I understand that you have made many rounds before you've even gotten here today. You have, right, since last night?
I have. Yes.
Well, we welcome you. And I want to start with you and your work. Part of your focus is the idea of older workers being paired with younger workers, not just in the workforce, but in community and neighborhoods. It's a chance for each generation to share what they know. What have you found in your studies, and can you give us a little bit of background in your studies?
Absolutely, and I thank you all, by the way, for inviting me here. I've had a wonderful experience in Columbus in that I've met with very engaged and enlightened individuals who are open to exploring this new area of aging. And I also think, I love this room because we're looking out on a confluence of rivers. And in my work, I say we have got to start breaking down the silos, stop talking about seniors as one segment of society and what can we do for them. We need to, number one, start thinking about seniors in terms of what can they do for us and recognizing what they can do for us, and then integrating, catalyzing their experience with the younger people. So just as there's a confluence of rivers here, we need in society a confluence across generations.
Now that the baby boomers, though, are heading toward retirement, and senior status, that's caused a lot of changes in how seniors view themselves and how society views them. So what are some of those changes that we're dealing with and that you're finding in your studies?
In my study.
Yes, yes, Elizabeth.
Sorry. The changing really happens indirectly when you're in the workforce and you bring generations together. You cannot bring generations together with the thought of, we're going to make you all work together and we're all going to be happy and sing Kumbaya together. I mean, both ends, the entire career arc would just, their hackles are raised and they think, I don't like Kumbaya and these people are standing in my way, and the older people think I'm being pushed outdoors, outside of the organization to make room for these young people who have no life work experience whatsoever. So when I say we do it indirectly, we bring what we call experience incubators into government situations, we bring it into organizational situations, we bring it into companies to catalyze that experience across generations. And the studies that have been done are really phenomenal. That when you talk about a multi-generational workforce, in the United Kingdom did a study, McDonald's in the United Kingdom did a study of their franchises. And they discovered in this study that those franchises that had a multi-generational workforce had a 20% average increase in productivity and profitability. So this is not just thinking, isn't this a nice world to have people working together? My responsibility is I have to prove it's economically valuable. I cannot go to governments and policy workers and they always say, isn't that nice? And yes, we should respect our elders. And I say, stop right there. I said that you need to recognize, again, that the senior demographic in its size and in its experience and in its smarts, it has deep, deep smarts that we need to translate and transition to younger people. But those deep smarts are creating businesses. People over 50 in the United States are creating more businesses, new startups, than any other entrepreneurial group in the United States. And even better, the business started by someone 50 plus is still in business 5 years out. So the data is there. It's just not Elizabeth as the lunatic fringe talking about this passionately for changing society and social and economic impact.
So those are great ideas, Elizabeth. Are people listening? And my husband Dan is here today, and he actually went to his boss after he left the Franklin County bench and said to Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, you know what, I could come back as a senior prosecutor again and mentor your young people. Assign me a young new prosecutor to every large case that I have. Show them how to work in the courts, because actually you don't learn that in law school. And then he had brown bag lunches on Friday afternoons. But Priscilla, I'll ask you. So Ron said, yeah, that's great, and he's one person. Do we see this in companies in Columbus? Do we see this in government as something that is really plausible for larger groups of people?
Thank you, Gail. I would say yes. I do believe that we do have corporations that, one, are realizing that the baby boomer generation is beginning to wants to start retiring and are leaving, and they see the huge gaps they're going to be in with their organizations. And I know I sometimes hear, well, we want the baby boomers to be able to leave because probably we're paying them more money, we're giving them, the benefits are higher, because as we age, certainly sometimes there are health concerns. But however, the knowledge that individuals have, like, I'm a baby boomer, I'm in that age group, the knowledge and skills that you have, you certainly want to make sure that you are mentoring other individuals who have great ideas, great skills, but certainly to help them to be able to navigate the city, navigate in those businesses. So it really is key. It's key if you have a business to make sure that you're helping individuals who are new to your company to be able to be successful and to learn from you. So yes, there are companies, I can think like Nationwide. Certainly there's an organization that makes sure that they have individuals who are a little more seasoned, certainly working with some of the newer executives who are coming within the company. So there are companies that realize this and are trying to move this initiative forward.
Katie, you were with MORPC on a 2-year contract type work on a survey, and the survey is to try to find out what Columbus is doing for seniors and what seniors need in our city. And what did you find out? And I know there are a lot of things that were in this survey, everything from transportation to community needs to employment. What were some of the biggest issues that came out of that, as you stack them, of importance?
Sure. So you're right. Absolutely, transportation is something that our older adult residents are concerned about. Also housing, it's really great that we are growing in Central Ohio, but, that has some negative implications on the housing. But the best thing I like to talk about is this overwhelming response from our older residents saying, thank you for including us. We do have a lot to say, we have a lot to give, and we're behind this movement. So where some of our needs and our challenges are, the best ideas for fixing them have really come out of our focus groups and our conversations.
Priscilla, though, why should the city care about seniors, honestly? Because aren't we supposed to be this vibrant city? We want to bring in the millennials. They're here for the growth.
Well, let me first of all, I want to recognize my council colleagues here, Michael Cinziano, who's co-chaired the study, working with MORPC and Katie, with also Fran Ryan, who couldn't be here today. And I also want to recognize, I see Tony Carroll and Cindy Farson, and certainly Carol, who works with Employment for Seniors. The city cares greatly about this. One, we just care about everyone that lives in the city of Columbus, so everyone knows that. But also, I think that it's important because for me, I chair also employment, or the workforce development. We want to make sure that every able-bodied individual who wants to work has the ability to work. As you know, that the way that we pay for the services in our city is because people are working. And so we want to have an opportunity. We think about 44% of individuals in our city that are 65 years or older are working. They're either looking for work, they're working, or like I said, they're searching for work. And so it is important that we make sure that as a city that we can embrace everyone. We're diverse. We say we're open and diverse. We're not saying we just want millennials. We're open and diverse city. And that means everybody's within that grouping. But clearly we want to make sure that individuals, again, who want to work have the ability to work within our city.
Katie, the survey is a great start for our city moving forward to try to take care of this aging population. What are some of the challenges that the survey pointed to that we will start to work on? And the city appears to be serious about really looking at these aging issues.
Definitely. So just in general, this movement towards more active transportation and making sure that transportation doesn't mean just your car, right? It means the ability to walk, the ability to ride your bike or ride the bus. So making sure that our built environment meets the preferences and needs of individuals of all ages. And what's really great about that is if you plan for someone with mobility needs and make it inclusive for them, then you've made it inclusive for everyone. So, strollers, skateboards, whatever mode of transportation you're looking at. We touched on housing, and certainly we're talking a lot about employment, but communication, socialization, respect and inclusion. So making sure that no matter your age, your zip code, your race, that you are valued and you're given purposeful opportunities to contribute to the city.
I asked Katie, I said, when you speak to older adults and you walk in the room and you're the expert, what kind of reaction do you get?
It's not good.
Mixed.
It's not good usually, yeah.
But it doesn't take them long to realize, right?
It doesn't take them long. I've got a pocket full of jokes usually, and so that tends to help warm up the room. But I think because we've really pushed people into either the boomers or the millennials, that it's easy to just take a quick look at someone and surmise what you think they're about. And for me, I just hope that after you start talking to me, you see that it's really from the heart. And I am hoping to make changes with older adults, so not for them, but really being dedicated to listening. Very few of the great ideas that I champion are my own. They really come from just sitting down and listening.
Elizabeth, what if we don't start to pay attention to this large aging population, not just here in the United States, but globally? And I know you've done work globally with other countries.
Yes. If we do not pay attention to the opportunity, we do it at our own peril as a society, and it's then the paradigm will come true. All the people that look upon this as a silver tsunami that will project into the future, and it will become a tsunami because you are not empowering people to be self-reliant, and that self-reliance comes through financial security as well as health security. And if someone is financially self-reliant. They are going to raise the level of prosperity in their community for people of all ages. They will continue to pay taxes. They will be creating jobs if they're starting businesses. And so to ignore it is at our peril. And I think one of the greatest examples is, and many people come to this, to your question earlier, are people actually listening and doing something about it? And I spoke about this morning. Prime Minister Abe of Japan. Japan has the oldest and fastest growing population in the world. And they are, or before his reelection, they were continuing to force mandatory retirement at age 60. Well, it was absolutely absurd because there's no longer enough people to fill the jobs that they're pushing these people out the door. So we were talking with his government. We said, you know, there has to be a way, again, to catalyze this experience so the young people you bring into the corporations will stay there. And I said, stop pushing those older individuals out because they also still have so much to contribute. So for Japan, it's an economic imperative. They have no immigration policy. So it's that was not an answer to this, how to continue to grow the workforce development. So it's something we need to listen, but not just listen, we need to act. And he acted, and he created something called Age-nomics, which if you don't know about it, it is absolutely fantastic in terms of changing this paradigm of retiring people who don't want to be retired. We're not creating some kind of forced march. People who have 20 to 30 additional years want to remain relevant. They want to continue contributing. They don't want to be dependent. And so to hold them back is just the height of absurdity. Sorry, I get clearly passionate about this.
Well, Elizabeth, you gave go ahead,
So
Priscilla.
just even to add to her comments, I mean, if you think about it, in the city of Columbus, if we have a 4% unemployment rate, and you think about who out there really wants to still work. I mean, you have people, I mean, we really have to find every able-bodied person who wants to work and stay within the workforce, because we know that we don't have enough people even to come and fill the jobs or have the skill sets right now that we need to fill jobs. And so consequently, we don't need to push people out. If people choose to, they want to retire, great, but just think about your friends. There are people who retire, who take maybe 6 months off, and then they're saying, I want to go work someplace. I want to go back to work. I mean, even if they're volunteering, they may say I'll volunteer someplace, but they still feel like, you know, because when you're 60, 65, and 70, I think just because we take care of ourselves in a different way than our, you know, when we think about our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and grandparents, I mean, it's very, very different. And so people still want to work. And so we need to, and I think it's important that I even think that having a person who even says, okay, I'll come work part-time. If you find a part-time person who has been very successful in their previous roles and the skills that they can bring to your organization, it's important to bring them back, or, you know, it's important not to, I say, necessarily push them out too. If you're an organization that has a set retirement age, we have to really rethink our policies around this issue, because we do need skilled people that have different various experiences to be able to help our economy to continue to grow. And most people who are working, they are working because, you know, professionally they like what they're doing. They want to continue to do that or do something similar to that. And then others have to be in the workforce because, you know, we're living longer. We're living longer. Which means it's still, you know, if you're retiring at 65 and you haven't planned, if you haven't had the ability to plan properly, you don't have enough income. So you still want to work, and because you need medical benefits today, and you certainly need maybe additional income.
Elizabeth, she is speaking about going back into the workplace, but there's this new term that I keep reading about called encore careers for, we don't want to say elderly, we don't want to say aging, we don't want to say seniors.
Say retirees.
Retirees, yes. What does that mean?
There was a woman in Scotland who put it most accurately, I think, when she said, when we are aging, we are not, and she was talking about the women in Scotland, we don't want to put the brakes on, we just want to change gears. And to your point, you want to do something else in your life. When you've when you've gotten to age 50 or 60, you have had all kinds of responsibilities, which has really forced you to work in many areas. You may not be doing what you wanted to do, but you had to do it because you had a family to raise, children to go to college, all kinds of responsibilities. So now in this new retirement, we say you're not retiring from something, we want you to retire to something and do it proactively, because this is an opportunity to try an idea, to try a form of work, to start a business that you've never had the freedom to do before.
Something that maybe you're passionate about, and all of a sudden you said, I have the time and maybe a little bit of money that I can try this out and see what happens.
Exactly.
Kate, in the survey, did you look at any of this unemployment to find out how many of the seniors would like to work because they enjoy being busy, or how many felt they needed to work for economic reasons?
We did. Thanks to the leadership of Carol and Employment for Seniors, we were really able to just jump right into these specific questions. And so we did find that the majority of individuals in Columbus, at least, are saying they're continuing to work for purpose or for fun, essentially. But a great number of them working because they need to for financial reasons or for insurance reasons.
And I suppose it could be for both. You know,
Right,
you find
right.
that encore career, you're still getting that income you need, but you're having a little bit more fun. Technology, Elizabeth, that's one thing that the older generation is struggling with a little bit when they want to remain in the workforce or go forward in the workforce. How can we get these folks to not only want to learn and embrace it? Because there's a lot that just say, it doesn't matter to me, Dan Hogan.
Well, despite Dan Hogan's example, I totally 100%, 110% disagree with that statement. Seniors, and I can realistically disagree with that statement because back in 1998, I started my first nonprofit, which was called Cyber Seniors, which was all about teaching seniors how to use the technology. And when I first brought up the idea, again, people thought I was a raving lunatic. I swear that should be my mem. And I finally persuaded, this is up in Portland, Maine, I persuaded a woman who's director of adult education to let me try this idea. And she was incredibly generous. And again, a very young person that was leading the adult education in Maine. And she gave me a computer lab to test this thesis. And we created our curriculum because everybody that I had spoken with that wanted to learn the technology, every guide, every book assumed some level of experience with the technology. So our first curriculum book was very, very, very basic computers, and that was exactly the title of it. And people came to that first workshop. We started in 1998 with 12 seniors in Portland, Maine. In 5 years, we had 28,000 seniors across the country. We could not scale fast enough to meet the demand, and today, it's for many years, seniors, people over 50 have been the fastest growing audience on Facebook. And then I just read last night, after another speaking engagement, I got back to my room, and there's an article online, it was either in Forbes or Fortune magazine, that seniors are embracing technology at a faster rate than any other cohort. And it's just, again, that example of seniors are extraordinarily curious, and they want to find the answer. And if there's something that's going to help them find the answer, like technology, if it's an answer to a job, if it's an answer to anything else they want to know in the world. And it's my grandson who taught me. I kept asking him about the technology, and he said, you know, there's a thing called Google, and if you, and you can type in just about any word, and you will get it. He said, not that I don't want to help you, but, and so then I took to Google, and so I am thrilled to I don't mean to be rude, but thrilled to disagree with you, because that is such a stereotypical bias against seniors. Seniors love the technology, and in those workshops we had, we always asked people what brought them in. First off, we congratulated them on the courage to come and learn about the technology, because these people were in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Then we asked them what brought them to the workshop. And those answers were just so profoundly illuminating about this, quote, senior demographic. It was everything from one woman was in her 80s and she'd been head of technology at Harvard. And everybody looked at it like, what? And she said, I was head of technology when the computer took up an entire room. She said, I have no idea what a mouse is and how to do that. And somebody else in the room stood up, a man stood up and said, I am sick and tired. He said, I realized this morning when I stood up to brush my teeth and it said www.colgate.com and I didn't have a clue what www was. He said it was time to come in and learn. So it's an incredibly exciting opportunity and seniors love it.
Well, if seniors love it, Priscilla, and we need them to do it, is the city doing anything to encourage seniors? Because honestly, in order to find some benefits for seniors, be it housing, be it employment information, it's online.
That's correct, most of it. Yes, I think that it is online, but I also think that the city's doing other things in terms of, having meetings in neighborhoods. I have to, commend my council member who's here, Michael Senziano, who has meetings in neighborhoods and making sure that he's sharing kind of services that we have. We have hearings. We go out into the community and share the different and have community meetings and share the different services that the city has to offer to our residents. But we also fund nonprofit organizations to be able to provide services to our seniors, whether they be employment services, services around technology, or we have a list of services that we offer, but a list of services of people that we are funding to be able to provide services to our seniors.
Please do.
Okay, so just to touch on Elizabeth's point, we found in Columbus that 73% of older adults report that their preferred means of communication is the internet, and that it's less about interest or preference and more about equity and whether or not you can afford the internet. And then once you break down that barrier, there really is that interest, and what a perfect way to sort of blend the generations, right? So the generations that's really comfortable with technology can offer some mentoring services back to older adults, so you can have some reciprocal mentoring there.
But the economics is really something that's important, because many of us take for granted that we are able to have that personal computer or laptop or whatever it is that we use. And because so much information is online, is there anything that we can do to bring those services to the people who don't have the economic means?
Oh, sure. There are central lines that you can call for information, sort of those one-stop shops where you can call for a question, whether it's Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging or the Franklin County Office on Aging, Life Care Alliance. So there really is a continuum of access to these services. The internet is one of them that will continue to grow, but we're certainly meeting the need in phone calls and papers and things like that right now.
We also work a lot with local libraries. And libraries are fabulous places, and they usually have a tutor in the library to help the senior. And lots of times, the beauty, again, of this kind of, I always say reciprocity builds equity. Young people in many communities in the United States have to fulfill, in high school, have to fulfill a community service requirement. So way back in the 90s in Maine, I said, can they fulfill that by acting as trainers in our workshops? And so we had intergenerational workshops from the very beginning, and it really works beautifully. But aside from libraries, also hospitals, I know. Some hospitals are putting in open access computers so that people can come in and ask more about their treatment or their disease. I think hospitals are getting very brave that they're letting people check them. And I'm sure, given the people that I've met in Columbus, that there are lots of things like that going on where you can provide open access.
What about attitudes? And Elizabeth, I'll start with you on this one, because there are other countries in the world that revere and respect their elders, the people that are older than them, grandparents. They go to them for information, for life guidance. We don't seem to do that or have that same reverence for the aging population in the United States. Is it just me, or does it appear to be true?
No, I think that is very accurate. We're such a youth-oriented culture, and still today, no matter whether I'm talking about policy or anything else, the primary focus starts with youth, and then hopefully I get them to consider the entire lifespan. But we're trying to change that paradigm. The opposite effect, though, in other cultures in the world, where there is this inordinate respect for seniors, it can be a negative because the younger generation believes that when the senior in their family comes to retirement age, they should take care of that individual. So the problem is they are taking away, in their desire to provide everything for that individual, they're taking away their independence. And I know when my mother was very incapacitated due to an accident, and my brother said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. She won't have to think of a thing." And I said, that will kill her. And it did. And so you have to think of the reverse also.
In just a few minutes, we are going to open it up to some questions from the audience. So if there's a thought that you have, be ready to share. But I have a final thought, and again, Elizabeth, I'm going to relate this to you globally. Have you seen countries that are successfully dealing with the aging population that the United States can learn from?
Oh, absolutely. I work with the European Union, and European Union, Ireland is one country in particular, way far ahead. They always, as I said this morning, invite me to speak there, and I said, this is the height of absurdity because you're so far ahead of us. And they actually have programs through all the EU countries. I know we're talking Eastern European countries as well, some very economically depressed. We work with countries in Africa, and they have examples of how this works, how to recognize the experience of the older population and not just recognize it, but let them contribute and let them interact with younger. They're fascinating projects going on worldwide. So we have a lot of catching up to do, but I'm hopeful Columbus will start leading the way in the United States.
I think we're on the right track.
Yes, yes.
Any questions? Does anyone have any questions? The microphone is there. And as Carol goes up, I'm going to ask another one. Do we see many people, and this is just to all of you, whoever wants to answer, attitudes of seniors being they want to retire and they want to, kind of remain retired and not do much of anything? Or do a lot of them really understand that in order to keep aging, to keep living, they have to keep doing?
I think it depends on their work. As we say, retirement really wasn't an idea until the Industrial Revolution, and people retired because their backs were broken. It was hard work. So I think you have to look at the work an individual is doing. And today we're such a knowledge-based society. It's you may get a little crooked crouching around your computer, but your back is not broken, and so. And your mental facilities are never better because you have all this deep wisdom and deep smarts that you can apply to the next step in life or transfer down to younger people. So I think in terms of attitude, we just have to retire the word retirement, change it.
And I think also, I think some of the individuals who are 75 and older that are retired maybe want to stay retired. However, though, everyone wants to have a purpose.
Yes, I think that's true.
That's key. So everyone wants to have a purpose. And so and so if you can stay in the workforce is wonderful, should you want to stay in the workforce, but I believe everyone who wants to be in should have an opportunity to be in. I absolutely believe that. I also think that should you decide that you want to be retired and not be in it, people still want to have purpose. And so how do we, whether they're volunteering, they want to feel useful. And you can really see that as you begin to age and you see where you start taking things away from individuals, you see what happens to their lives. So you see what happens when, and just think about this, and I think people in this age have had parents to go through this, so when the moment, this is just even driving and transportation, you take the keys away
No, it's devastating.
It is for them.
from someone.
Their
It is
independence
The
is-
independence is gone.
Yeah.
So it's independence. So when you're working, you're volunteering, you feel independent, but you're also, again, you may have purpose, and we all have to have purpose. That's what gets us up every single day. So we don't want to take that away.
And it impacts their health and well-being. So if you have purpose and that feeling of being able to contribute and remaining relevant, you stay healthy longer. So again, you're not depleting the healthcare system. You are really sustaining it in many ways.
That's right.
Carol?
I'm Carol Looper, and I have seen over many years women cracking the glass ceiling. Now I see there is an age ceiling. How do we get the message out that us older retired people still do have it, still do want to work, still can work. How do we get that word out to employers?
I've been doing that, as I say, around the world in terms of, number one, my background is publishing and being an editor, so my natural inclination is to tell stories. So I hold up examples of people that are doing this around the world. But more than examples, I go back to something like the McDonald's study, and I present the economic data points, because I can't go before Congress in Washington, well, who would want to nowadays, and come forth with a policy unless I can demonstrate what that impact is going to be. As much as we all believe in this as a social mission, it has to be a win-win. Otherwise, it's just charity. And so if we can show employers how it increases their bottom line, how it increases productivity, which in turn increases profitability, then the argument is made. So for me, it's a combination of data plus the stories of individuals doing this.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Mark Shy from Palmetto Construction in Franklinton, celebrating my encore career with them. My question is, it goes along the lines of Judge Hogan and what he's doing. What I'm seeing in the construction business right now in Columbus and in Central Ohio and the regions we serve is a lack of manpower. And to your point about Googling, YouTube, everybody wants to go on YouTube and see how they do something, but serving as a craftsmanship judge yesterday and visiting some sites, I noticed I don't want to use the word appalling, but I guess that's the word I'll use, lack of craftsmanship in some of the projects. What do you see in terms of the panel of, here's a disparity of younger people coming into a workforce, and then there seems to be no one to help develop the craftsmanship needed in the skilled trades.
So we kind of need the apprenticeship programs again?
There are some in place. There's a lot of them in place, and there's lots going on with the Columbus Public Schools in terms of what they're doing. I think we're doing some things, but I want to get more of an international or a national approach, and as well as the city and Katie's view on it.
It's critically important, and one of the best example, again, if people were there this morning, is I call him a construction, but he's a sort of a master builder that builds glorious buildings all over the world. And he has a young crew in his offices who are young technology-driven geeks who build all kinds of beautiful, beautiful 3D blueprints for building buildings. And he said, what I realize after listening to you and why so many of our beautiful buildings take so long to build is because none of these young people have ever held a hammer and constructed a building. So he said, and to your point in terms of how can we possibly bridge this gap, he said, I'm now going to bring older actual construction workers to my design studio so they can sit at the shoulder of the person designing something, so the person designing it will immediately see and get this immediate feedback of how this may or may not work. So it has to be done intentionally, and it has to be either an apprenticeship program, but first there has to be the recognition that it needs to be done, and then you need to get people to start building some of these programs.
Just to add to those comments, and certainly I've spent a lot of time recently with the construction trades. And just like the construction trades, thinking about, I'm talking to, Nationwide Insurance, realizing they're not going to have enough people to come into the workforce, the hospitals. I mean, Columbus has some significant, we're doing well, but again, because the boomers are looking to leave, we do not have a workforce prepared to come in and take on all these jobs. And if we're going to attract and retain these businesses here, we have to figure that out. And part of the solution is going to absolutely have to be seniors being recognized and staying in the workplace. So to answer this also part of your question, we do have to figure out a way that we're working with our millennial generation for them to be able to appreciate the what people who have been in the workforce are seasoned individuals to be able to learn from them. We have something, both of us have something to learn from each other. I mean, I think our millennial generation brings a wealth of great ideas, maybe ways of doing things a little differently, and we need to hear that. But we also need, our millennial generation also to know that to get to where we are, to have that craftsmanship, it didn't happen overnight. It took some time, even with an apprenticeship program. If you think about the trades, you may be in an apprenticeship program for 3 to 4 years, and you're gaining your skills. I mean, I came along, we had management training programs. I just didn't jump up and all of a sudden I'm now the executive at 22 years old. I'm just saying we have to somehow figure out how to work with that generation, bring us together, as you're saying, side by side. And that's just not in construction, it's in all the work that we do. And so I think it's apparent upon us that we need to, as I think most people in this room are more at the same seasoned individuals, but we have to figure that out, because if we don't figure that out, we're not going to be able to have what you're talking about, having the individuals that are going to be able to be the seasoned construction persons to be able to do the work that's necessary. And we also, the last thing I'll say in this is that there also is an issue, if I ask most of you are working, we've got to do something about individuals who happen to be using, who's not using drugs. Because one of the issues that we're finding is we don't have enough, we don't have enough people who can go to work also, not just because they don't have the skill set or don't recognize, the value of being with someone who's a senior, is that they have other issues going on that are also preventing them from coming in the workplace. So for those of you who are employers, it's important that you realize the importance of continuing to have seasoned people staying and working for you. And again, what that means, having part-time work, but they are important in how they also can work with our younger people.
Yes, your name, please?
Hi, Betsy McCabe. I'm with the United Way of Central Ohio. For all the reasons we discussed here today, your United Way is trying to develop strategies and initiatives to help engage people when they leave the workforce, help them stay engaged and feel connected to the community to achieve that sense of purpose. Do you have any advice for us on, as we start looking into this, groups that we should talk to or things that we should be thinking about?
Well, of course, I'm going to say the older adults, right? That's my whole bag. But I just the big table that have been going on with the Columbus Foundation. I think that's a really great model, and bringing together different cross sector individuals to talk about sort of their piece of the pie and how they see it. So. Just the more you can get out and talk to larger groups, and I'm sure if we talked afterwards, we can certainly put a list together.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Warren Fishman. Thanks a lot for coming. This is a very worthwhile forum. We didn't talk much about young people planning for aging. As an employer, I experience that young people really don't think much about aging, and you talked about two categories of senior workers, and that's the people who have to work and the people who want to work, and it's much more fun when you want to work. And I think that's going to be a serious problem. Talk about the tsunami, where we have these people who can't afford to retire or can't afford to do what they want to do. Can we touch on that maybe?
So I would say that's closer than you think, right? So it's not just younger people that aren't thinking about it. Our survey showed that really a lot of people want to age in their home, they want to age in their community, but when we asked if they're taking the steps that we know are needed to do that, they're not. So I don't think it's a generational thing. I think it really has more to do with the fact that people don't want to identify with old. And so the longer they can push it off and keep it far away, the less that they feel old. So I think we need to start having conversations about planning, about realities of what Medicare does and doesn't pay for. I mean, there's this real proactive approach that we need to, we already have going on in the city, but we need to do even more in getting people prepared.
Yes.
No. Okay. Michelle May, Ohio Department of Transportation. So I work in government, and the problem seems overwhelming. And we're trying to figure out where do we start. So I'm just wondering, what are one or two, or maybe even three things that we should be doing now to try and address this problem?
I'll jump in again, back to the survey. We know that we want to keep people mobile, we want to keep them healthy and keep them out in the community. So our survey really showed that sidewalks are a concern here. So that's something we're taking a really deep look into. And I'm sure you have something to say on transportation too, right?
What's really horrifying is that, yes, it is a problem in cities like Columbus, but it's even more problematic in rural areas and the rural isolation of older people. And again, I hate to go back to Japan as an example, but because it's an imperative for them to do something about their aging population, because the young people that are working in Japan are going to the cities to work, and they're leaving their parents home in the rural areas. So again, Prime Minister Abe has said, well, we've got to do something about this because the small towns are dying and the farms are dying. So he says, how can we align what's happening? If the seniors have a small business in that rural community, how can we use technology to boost that business so it's not just a substance business in terms of taking care of their own lives, but how can we scale that so it becomes part of the whole infrastructure of how we do business in Japan? So it's, in many ways, it's the physical transportation issue, but some of it can be solved by technology. So it's not like the people in the outside communities have to come all the way into the city. The same problem exists to an even greater degree in Africa, where you have so many older African women who are raising their grandchildren because of the AIDS epidemic. And they had these small subsistence farms to take care of their families. And there's a brilliant woman who's created a program called I Am the Code, where she's teaching something like 10,000 young women in Africa how to code. And what she did is she asked me for ways in which we could connect those young coders to the women in rural Africa. So those women African farmers are now bringing products to market, whether they're raising a crop that can be transferred into a product and sold throughout Africa or throughout the world. So it's phenomenal what technology can do to help. It's certainly not the total answer, but it does provide an absolutely profound link to keep people where they want to live and to keep maintaining their independence and their self-reliance.
You know, I also think that this report, that we did this age-friendly report, and that when we certainly asked seniors, and seniors have shared with us, their thoughts and concerns, and then we have, nonprofit organizations and we have Franklin County, we have the city, we have the public sector that are certainly, working with seniors. I think once you gather all this information, it then requires us to have to do something. So, you can't ask people to give all this data in this age-friendly report and let it sit on a shelf. Because then, this is to ask, to answer your question, we really do have to now be focused on that. And I know we have a lot of competing issues that go on in the city. But this is very important. And so it means with the help of my council colleague and all of the councilors who are working on this, but also the community, we've got to make this a priority. Because we're going to feel, if this community is going to feel the negative reactions to this, if we're going to have some negative ramifications if we don't understand what's going on in our community, and plan for it. So
well, and it's not just the aging,
Correct.
as I think you said earlier. If you have the chronically unemployed, if you have formerly incarcerated individuals that don't have cars, to get them to work is an insurmountable challenge. So it's a transportation issue, but as I said in the very beginning, we've got to break down these silos. It just doesn't impact seniors, it impacts
Everybody.
the entire community.
We could go on and discuss more things, but we're out of time. I thank you all, Katie and Priscilla and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me today. Carol?
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed today's forum. We encourage you to continue with coffee and cookies and conversation when we're done here. Now, you know that you can view and share today's forum and all of our CMC forums on CTV, Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Thanking our sponsors, Osteopathic Heritage Foundations, our partner, MORPC, and our speakers, Elizabeth Isele, Katie White, Priscilla Tyson, and Gail Hogan. And thanks to all of you for being here. I sure hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.